All right. So good. We're recording.
Great.
Good to go.
All right. So today we have Austin Long here from West Virginia. He is a real estate agent. And so we decided to have him on the podcast because he has lots of knowledge we would like to know about.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Uh,
Yeah, working on the real estate agent thing. Just mostly an investor right now, but working on my license and all that entails. So
Okay.
Awesome.
So before we jump into the real estate stuff, let's give Austin a few rapid fire questions. Just get your mind going,
Let's do it. Let it ride.
All right. So if you were a smoothie, what kind of smoothie would you be?
Strawberry.
Why
I almost said strawberry and banana, but I hate banana. So I went like strawberry banana and then I had to roll it back a little bit and just went straight strawberry.
Okay.
What was because we met in college.
We did.
So what was your favorite college experience?
I love San Diego Christian College. Probably surfing with the boys. I think Daniel was out there at one point. We were terrible. We're so bad at surfing, but it was fun.
I was so bad. Like, I don't know why they kept inviting me.
It honestly made him feel better. I think is like, I was with you. Like I could barely zip up the wetsuit. It was a whole mess. Like I was partially drowning and they were like, let's keep inviting him because it makes me feel better. So I don't know.
Man, you're lucky you got a wetsuit. Like I did not. I remember this guy, Connor, he was like a professional surfer and he'd be like, yeah, we're going to get you out there. He'd like make it sound like he's going to be with you the entire way. And he gets out there and just dips, just leaves.
Straight up gone.
And so you're just
met
out
Connor
there
the first time and he was like, yo, dude, do you surf? And I was like, yeah, bro, I surf. And he's like, can you teach me? And I'm like, yeah, bro, I can show you the tips on standing up. He's out there surfing like mavericks, like on these like 50-foot waves. And I just am like longboard paddling, like doggy It was a mess. So yeah, we got, I think Daniel and I both got clowned on that one.
Yeah.
So,
I made it like a mental note to like never go surfing with him again. Cause I was like, I could drown and he wouldn't even notice. He'd be like, oh, where's Daniel? Like at the end of the day.
Oh, peace. He's fine. Probably.
Okay. So then I guess you didn't move to West Virginia for your love of surfing.
That is
they
correct.
probably don't have surfing there.
No. We barely have we just got Uber like 3 years ago, and I'm not even lying.
Oh, man.
Dang.
Straight up.
Very progressive.
So why the old WV? I'm assuming.
So my wife's here in PA school. She graduates. She graduated Saturday, so like a couple of days ago.
I saw that on Instagram. Congrats.
Yeah, physician assistant school. So she's like balling out in medicine, and so I love it. It's honestly a super cool opportunity, especially like in the real estate and business sphere. West Virginia is like 15 years in the past. So you look at like San Diego 15 years ago and you're like, what didn't we have then that we have now? And that's where like West Virginia is now. So kind of like cheat codes, to be honest with you. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and jump into the real estate stuff after we do our intro.
Do it.
This is Dial Up Podcast with your hosts,
Daniel,
Bobby, and our special guest,
Austin.
Awesome.
So how did you get into the whole real estate investment and real estate in general?
Yeah. So I've always loved real estate. I kind of did it. I read a lot about it before I got into it. I graduated college and I was renting an apartment in San Diego for way too much money. As you guys know, probably.
Yep.
But yeah, so I was doing that for a long time. And then we moved out to West Virginia and kind of was doing the math. And it was like, oh, well, I can rent an apartment for this much or rent a house for, however much money. But if I buy it with like a little bit of money down, I'll actually pay less per month. And so kind of just started being like, okay, well, I'm just going to buy a house. And then got into kind of house hacking and I can go into that a little bit later, but started house hacking and then got an amazing dream job that, I'll never quit until they kill me or, fire me. So, went and did that and then was able to kind of have the capital to move elsewhere. And so started just acquiring properties. So it's been really, really fun.
So I know a lot of people hear, okay, real estate, it's a way to, build wealth. But kind of what are the first steps in going into that?
Yeah. So, don't do things that you can't afford. That's probably the first thing is, if you're like, I heard you guys last week kind of talking about like paycheck to paycheck, like, doing that type of thing. Like if you're not in this stage of life where you can potentially afford, buying a house, then don't do it. I would say is, I think that everyone can in a certain sense, but California is very different than West Virginia. So there's kind of different markets and different, avenues to get into real estate. The first thing I would say is like, if you guys are interested in real estate, start reading, start learning. Don't just, kind of like Daniel said last week, where he was talking about like doing a lot of research before you buy stocks. It's like tenfold for real estate. Is you're getting a 30-year fixed mortgage, and you're not just signing, a $10 share. You're going, okay, cool, I'm going to buy a $300,000 house, and you're signing that paperwork. So yeah, it's definitely something you got to do your research in.
$300,000 would barely get you a condo here.
So yeah, $300,000 would get you a straight up mansion in West Virginia. Like if you told a soul, I'm not even lying to you, man, like 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house on 10 acres in West Virginia is about $300,000.
Wow. Dear God, so, Bobby, I think we're moving to West Virginia.
I was gonna say, if you guys want to come here and hang out, you can. Like we can all chill. We can kick it. We can do a podcast out here, and y'all can come hang out. So,
so one of my questions that I have for you is like, if you're wanting to buy a home or house, like, what are the things leading up to that you need to like prepare in advance? Or what are the steps actually?
Yeah. So the first thing is pre-approval, right? And so that's the thing that I see a big issue, and not issue, but like people will start house shopping and jump on Zillow or whatever, realtor.com, and they're like, oh, I love these houses, and I'm gonna go to open houses on a Sunday. If you are not pre-approved, your realtor is never going to take you seriously. Like you'll never get a deal ever, especially in this market today where it's like, a house goes on the market and 3 hours later they have 10 offers. Like the process of getting pre-approved through your bank, through a mortgage lender is pretty significant. It'll take a few days. And so the house is going to be gone by that point. So get pre-approved before you start looking for houses. It doesn't hurt you. So if you think you're in the market, go ahead and talk to your lender, see if you can get pre-approved for something. Pre-qualified is very different. So pre-qualification is like you go to the bank and they're like, yeah, sure, we give you that much money. But really they like haven't like signed the dotted line yet. So pre-approval is really important. And then you can start looking.
Okay, so pre-approval and then pre-qualification?
Yes.
Right?
So it's pre-qualification technically, but that really doesn't mean anything. And you'll see a lot of bankers be like, oh, we'll just get you pre-qualified. Just go ahead and jump straight to the pre-approval, because the pre-approval is really where the bank puts their money where their mouth is and says like, yes, we will give them a loan for a certain amount of money.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then, okay, I want to go back to what you mentioned earlier. House hacking, what the heck is that?
Yeah, so my first property I ever owned was a single family home, and my wife and I were, my wife was in school, I was working a job that paid decent, but wasn't like anything crazy. So I was like, well, you know what? Like, let's just rent out the bottom portion of my house. Like I had a downstairs unit, and there was like a separate entrance that they could go through the back, essentially the backyard. It was like steps down in the backyard. There was a separate entrance, and then there was like a big open space. So I was like, cool, let's just rent that out. She won't come upstairs. It's like a big dorm room. And so we actually did an addition of a shower to make it a full bathroom, and then rented it out for about a third of our mortgage. So like right off the bat, I was paying a third of my mortgage, through this rent, which was amazing. I mean, talk about like people who are interested in getting someone to stay with them, and then all of a sudden they can afford a house that they didn't think they could afford. So yeah, that's kind of house hacking, is essentially renting out rooms, renting out, if you get a multifamily property, so a duplex, triplex, quadplex. House hacking would be you living in one of them and then renting out the rest. And a lot of the times if you do that, especially in a multifamily, you can live for free. No mortgage, no problem. Like everyone pays your mortgage. And that's, especially with an FHA loan, that's really awesome.
So Two things. So could that formula that you just used in that scenario be applied to any, like if I wanted to use that same scenario in like California or Southern California, do you think that would apply, or would it be a little bit different, a little bit harder?
Yeah, so definitely there's really two types of real estate. There's like cash flowing real estate, and then there's the like equity real estate strategies. So the equity real estate strategy is, if you look at people who are renting out places in California, they're making $200 a month in cash flow. So even single family homes, they'll go ahead and rent it out for about $200 more than their mortgage, and they're stoked on it because over time their house is going to be valued higher, because as you guys know, the market's just booming in California. Like you can buy a house somewhere in California and then in 5 years it's going to be worth like $200,000 more. At least that's what we've seen over the last like 10 years. So that's like the equity game. So you can play the equity game, and that's great. West Virginia is definitely more of a cash flow heavy market where like we don't get a whole lot of equity over time. Like our property really does stay about the same. We have a pretty stagnant market, but rent is really high in comparison to the purchase price. So I can go ahead and cash flow 10 times the amount that someone is cash flowing in California, but in 10 years, my property is going to be worth a lot less. Like I'm going to get a lot less gain over time. So you can definitely still do it in California. FHA loans are phenomenal. You only have to put 3.5% down. And so you really can get a house for pretty cheap, $15,000, $20,000. So save up for however long, half a year. And then you put that money down, and then you rent out the rooms in your place. You get a multifamily, you rent out other things like that. That's going to be a good way to do it. So there's always a way to house hack for sure.
With the FHA loan, does that come with an increase, like an additional tax that you have to pay?
Yeah. So PMI, it's called, it's the Federal Housing Administration is the FHA. So that's the FHA loan is a loan that is guaranteed to the banks for the government, essentially. So the government is backing that loan essentially to the banks and saying like, hey, even if this bum doesn't pay his mortgage, like we've got you for a portion of it essentially. And so the FHA loan, you do get stuck with what's called PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. Mm-hmm. So most of the time, anytime you pay less than 20% down, you'll get stuck with a PMI. But you can do the math, right? Real estate is just math. Essentially, if you can go ahead and say, cool, I'm going to get 3.5% down. I'm going to have a PMI of about $150, $200 a month. But if I'm renting out 2 rooms in my place and then I have another duplex that has 3 rooms, like I can make up for that PMI. That makes sense. So it really is all about math.
So maybe something that has a little less to do with math, or at least in my perspective. What about getting tenants? What's that process like?
That's hell, man. It's freaking hell. Oh, tenants. So my first house, I had a single family home. We my wife and I upgraded, which was amazing, super big blessing. And we were like, we're going to rent out our single family house. It's going to be amazing. And we rented it out in like 3 days. We put it on the market, put it on Zillow, right? So there's a bunch of ways to do it. You can go Zillow, you can go realtor.com, you post it. Facebook Marketplace for people who are into real estate. Facebook Marketplace is an amazing place to get renters. But you got to do your due diligence. And even when you do, it's going to be a nightmare. So I got this guy, right? And he comes in and he's like, yo, I love this house. I love, my dog's going to run back here. He's like, I can envision my family. I'm like, hell yeah, renter. And so he's like, cool, I'll put the money down right now you have your deposit, renter's deposit. He was like, yeah, deposit in, good. Take it off the market. I'll take it by next week. I'm like, hell yeah. So then all of a sudden this guy gets in there. His wife has disappeared. Maybe he has a wife, maybe he doesn't. He's talking about her, but we've never seen her before. So we're like, okay, this dude might have a wife, but it might be a pillow that he enjoy. I don't know. So this dude is talking about his wife, and he's like, yeah, my wife's really going to love it, whatever. So finally, like, we've never seen his wife. We've met this guy 4 times. He's come and, like, checked out the property. He gave us the sign off of, like, yes, the property is great. We're moving in, whatever. Great. 2 weeks later, all of a sudden he calls me. He's like, I'm moving out. He signed a year lease. I was like, what? You're moving out? And he's like, yeah, it's a train wreck. Like, this is all the stuff that's wrong. And I'm like, dude, you moved in 2 weeks ago. You could have said it. And so he, like, fought my lease. And this is the first property I've ever rented. He fought my lease. He was like, I'm taking you to court. I was like, great, I'll see you there. Like, let's do it. Let's roll. And so he was like, yeah, I'm fighting your lease. It's illegal, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So he ended up fighting the lease, and we ended up winning. Like, we didn't actually end up having to go to court because I kind of called his bluff, and I was like, let's go. I have time. So
I got time.
I got time, you know, and he, like, worked a lot. And I was like, bro, I work a sales job. I'm like commission only. Let's roll. Like, I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off if I need it. Like, let's get this going. So, yeah, he ended up caving. But, dude, tenants, like, if I'm giving advice, it would be make sure you find great tenants. Make sure you run a background check. 1 month of rent is not worth getting a bad tenant for a year. Eviction is so expensive. So if you have to evict someone, it's a nightmare. Especially in California, if you have to get rid of one of your tenants, the amount it costs is so much greater than 1 month of your rent that you're better off waiting for a great tenant than just jumping right in.
Interesting. I would never have thought, like, eviction was so expensive.
Yeah, lawyers, right? Lawyers are expensive as all heck. So
yeah, that makes sense. But man, that's wild. That's just
yeah, it's a nightmare. So tell me this: have you guys, like, what are you guys seeing in California, like, rental wise? Are you guys seeing like as young fellas, like, how does buying a house seem to you right now?
Oh, impossible. Purely, at least in California. Impossible. I've actually been looking in Colorado and in Minnesota because it's so much cheaper.
Yeah.
So for me, well, 2 things. One, I'm moving out of California because it's crazy expensive here.
Like a son of a gun.
And yeah, but for me, I get the VA loan through the Navy, which is awesome because you don't actually have to put anything down.
I was going to talk about the VA loan.
Yeah.
So much.
That's a baller move right there.
20%, I mean, in Boston, you know, decent homes are like $600,000.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's not even like anything fancy. That's not the mansion you're talking about. That's like two bedroom.
Yeah.
And so 20% of that, you know, that's like more than a salary, like, for most people.
It's $120K. Like, that's a bold move if you have that cash laying around.
So VA loan will definitely be the route that I go.
Yep.
But I know for other people that's a little more, you know, they don't have access to that. Maybe, you know, they didn't spend time in the military.
No, we don't, Bobby.
No.
Even I have to put. The good news is you don't have to put 20% down. The FHA loan, first home buyers, like 3.5% down is pretty standard. So that is the good news. Is, you know, you do have to pay a little bit of PMI, but most people hopefully can get into a house with 3.5% down.
I'm too stubborn. I'm like, I'm not paying that PMI. Like, I'm doing full 20, 30%, whatever we got to do.
Well, let's talk about this though, because this is a good topic. So yes, an FHA loan is like, PMI is garbage, right? And I hate it, and I paid it. So I paid it for about 2.5 years. The good news though is you are never locked in to a mortgage. So even though it's a 20, 30-year mortgage, what you can do is you can always refinance, and that is usually the move, right? And so honestly, a big investment strategy of mine is based off of the refinance. So I can take some unfavorable, and I don't recommend this, but like once you get the hang of it, I can take some unfavorable loan terms knowing that I'm going to refinance in 7 months on a 30-year conventional. So like, that's kind of how it works. Is like, so yeah, like on my first home, I paid PMI. I had 3.5% down. And then that was 2 years ago. And then this year I went and was like, well, let's refi this bad boy. Like, we made a lot of improvements, which is called forced equity. So like, when you do a lot of improvements, that's going to improve the value of your home. For single family, you'll bring an appraiser back in who's going to tell you the value of your home on a refinance. and that appraiser is going to come in and tell you what your home is worth. We did a ton of work, and we also got very lucky, but it appraised for about $45,000 more than I bought it for. So what that did was it gave me about $45,000 worth of equity. So I was able to refi out. I closed on that actually in 2 days. I was able to refi out and drop that PMI and drop my payment by $200 a month. So it's like, the refi is always an option.
So, okay, I want to touch on one point.
Wait, before you do that, a quick note is that actually applies to student loans as well. So like I had undesirable student loan terms to start with. Mm-hmm. They were garbage. And then I kind of refinanced my student loans and got a better percentage, and it was more affordable.
So Dan, how did you do that? If you don't mind me asking, like, how did you learn about that, and where did you go for that? Because I'm sure there's people that are listening to this like, I'm getting trashed on my student loans.
That's exactly where I was at. Like, so basically you have to pay your student loans for a year so that people can see that you can pay them, right? And then after that year, I took a Wells Fargo student loan, and I was paying around the $1,200 a month just for like one loan, right? I refinanced.
Man.
Daniel Christian, baby.
Let's go.
Screw that place. So basically, I refinanced. Now I'm only paying about $540, and so it's cut in half. And then you can split that extra money you're saving and like add it to the principal, or just save it so you can buy a home.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So, okay, going back to the real estate issue, you were talking about forcing capital or forcing equity. That's what equity. And so what are some different techniques or different areas of the home that would force more equity than others? Like
so it depends on your property. Yeah, it depends on your property. So homes are appraised differently. The kind of way that it works is you have single family homes, right? So that's like your first kind of grouping. Next, you have what's called a residential multifamily. So that's 2 units, 3 units, 4 units. You can still get conventional standard residential loans on that, which is going to be a much lower interest rate than what you're going to get on the next one, which is commercial. So you have like these 3 different kind of things here. So you have like single family, small multifamily, and then you have commercial. The way that it works, it kind of depends. The residential should be this way. It's different from place to place from what I've understood. Single family is for sure just based on the property, right? So if you want to appraise for more, you want to do more equity, you basically need to make it nicer, right? You add amenities that are desirable is the way that I would put it. Fresh paint is a gold mine. If you like, you'd be so surprised on how many times fresh paint just like makes your equity skyrocket. Laminate floors, right? I know hardwood is the kind of like desirable piece, but especially if it's a rental property, laminate floors, like really nice looking wood laminate floors are really nice. So if you put in new floors, that's going to do you a great service. If you can add a bedroom or bathroom, that's going to skyrocket your equity because you went from let's say like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath to a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, right? So let's say they have an extra room or an office or something like that. If you turn that into a bedroom, you just change the entirety of your house. So that's kind of single family. It's more cosmetic. It's more desire to live there. Once you go, and this is just my experience in West Virginia, once you go to 2 to 4 units, I have a few multi-unit family kind of properties. Those are based on, and commercial as well, is based on rent. So like how much rent are you getting for these multi-families? And that's what it's going to appraise for. So, if like I'm doing a strategy right now called Burr, which if you guys are looking for more real estate stuff, Bigger Pockets podcast is amazing. I learned so much from them. It's like buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That's like the Burr strategy. Their big thing is, when you go into these multifamilies, you can essentially just improve them, up the rent, and then refinance out, and it's going to appraise for much more. And that's a really good strategy. So if you can rent for more with multifamily, that's going to bump your appraisal a lot.
Interesting. So I had a question. If someone was looking to kind of do what you're doing, would it be better to start with like a single family home, or would it be best to do like a condo or buy an apartment? I'm not sure if you can buy apartments in other areas of the country, but like you can buy apartments here. So
yeah. So it's kind of whatever you guys are comfortable with, right? Like it really does come down to the math. So if you can buy a place that you can get out of, like if it's not your dream home, right? Like you're buying a place that you're like, okay, eventually, instead of selling this at the back end, I want to rent this out. That's a really good place to start, is like, okay, you have to look for rental comps. So you look in the area, let's say it's an apartment, right? So you go and you look at all the apartments in the area. What are they renting for, right? So if they're renting for, man, for me, it's like $800 out here. I know I was paying $2,500 in California. So at $2,500, right? What's my mortgage, right, on this apartment? And does the rent cover that mortgage at the end of the day? That's a really good place to start. I would highly suggest, if it's not your dream home and you're not in the place where you can really gamble, essentially, of like, oh, I'm going to be able to afford this for the rest of my life. A good place to start is, does the rent cover the mortgage? So do your research, look at the comps around the area. Like if it's a single family home in Poway, you're like, all right, cool, let's check it out. Like, let's go and, okay, the mortgage that I'm going to get through my mortgage broker, he's saying that it's going to be, $3,000 a month. Can I rent it for more than $3,000 a month? Or am I going to be underwater, right? Am I going to owe money on it if I ever need to bail out? That's usually my go-to, is if you're going to buy a place, no matter what it is, make sure that the rent covers it. And the other thing is, make sure that you're not just going by the Zillow estimate. Because a lot of the times you look on Zillow and it's like, oh, the Zestimate is this much money, but that's not including insurance. That's not including PMI. That's not including HOA, right? If you're in an apartment or you're in something else, HOA fees are a thing. So definitely make sure that you do your research, that you can A, afford it, and then B, also, like, I would never buy a place that I couldn't rent out for more than I bought it for.
So can we do some quick bar napkin type math here?
Do it.
So, they have prices listed.
Right.
But how much are you actually going to pay? Let's say it's a $300,000 house. Mm-hmm. How much is someone actually going to pay when it comes down to closing costs and other fees that maybe some people aren't expecting?
That's a great question. So the other thing that I would say is, never be in a rush to buy a house or a property in general, because the biggest thing you want is a great deal. So we're talking about equity. We're talking about things that are going to give you value in the future. If I can buy the property 20% or more of what it's worth, right? So if I can buy it for like 80% or 75% or 70% of what it's actually worth, that I automatically earn that money. So an example here is like, $100,000 house. I bought it and then it ended up appraising during the process of me buying it. It appraised for 150, right? So I made $50,000 immediately once I bought the house. So already I was able to refi out and actually get all my money back. It's called a cash out refi. So what I would say is, always look for great deals over the dream property that you want. Because if you can get a great deal, you can earn $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 immediately when you buy it. And that just comes down to negotiating. It comes down to knowing comps, right, in the area. So if you buy the worst house in the best neighborhood and you can say, cool, it's going to cost me $20,000 to get it up to par on this, and all of them are going for $70,000 more than what I bought it for, you automatically gain $50,000 in equity. So find the good deal.
So at the risk of sounding like an idiot, I'm just going to ask this anyways. So when you say refinance out and you took out a home loan for like a property, how much is that is actually going into your pocket, and how much is that like going back? Does it go back to the bank, or how does that work?
Yeah, good question. So it's called a cash out refinance. So basically what a refinance is you have a new bank come in, buy out your loan on the appraised value. So that's what you want. So there's two types of there's two types of refinances. There's one that is for what you bought it for, which you never want to go for. And there's one that where it's what is for appraises for, right? Like what you could sell it today for. And that's the appraisal. So you can get an appraisal based refinance. So like LTV, like loan to value cost, is if you can get them to give you what it's appraising for on the refinance, then you're going to have a lot more equity. So let's go back to that $100,000 unit, right? So if I have a $100,000 unit and then it appraises for 150, right? Let's say I put 25% down. You were asking about closing costs. I think 31 is what I ended up putting, or 29 is what I ended up putting in. So $29,000 is what I ended up putting in, but it automatically appraised for 150. If I wanted to go ahead and like cash out refinance, they will pay off my loan, leave 20% equity, right? 25% equity in it, right? So that, remember that down payment that we were talking about, that 20 to 25%. So if you put that in on this refinance and they pay off your loan, so I had a loan for like $66,000. So $66,000 loan plus whatever 20% is of 150. I don't know the math off the top of my head. 30,000. So that's 99. But if it goes for 190 or 150, right, then from 95-ish thousand, including closing costs, maybe 100,000 in closing costs, that's going to leave me a lot of space on the back end, and you can actually pull that money out and they'll give you a check. The bank will literally write you a check for whatever's left over.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
It does sound nice. I'm in the middle of it right now, so I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. like if you're doing great, we'll definitely have you on again. If you're like on the streets, like, well, then
yeah, I'm gonna like be knocking on the window behind you. I'm gonna be like, yo, remember me? Like when you guys blow it up big, I'm gonna be like, yo, remember me? Remember that time I gave everyone really bad real estate advice?
Oh man. So what are some mistakes to avoid? Maybe let's say 3 mistakes to avoid.
All right. So number one is buying something you can't afford. The biggest thing is the bank wants you to spend money with them. Like it's like someone in a store, right? And you go up to them, you're like, how much is this Xbox? And they're like, how much do you think the Xbox is? And they're like, well, you're like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, how much money do you have? And they're like, well, I mean, I have $500. They're like, it's $450. And then they're like, well, but actually I can get $300 from my mom. And they're like, now it's $690. And that's kind of how it works, is like the bank wants you to spend as much money as you possibly can. That doesn't mean it's something you can afford. So definitely make sure like you calculate in all the costs. Definitely make sure you account for the stuff that's going to go wrong, right? With plumbing, with electrical, with crazy stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like the stuff that you don't see coming. So repairs, if you're buying a rental property, account for vacancy, like the amount of time that your house is going to go vacant. That's going away. A lot of people really need houses, but that's definitely something to account for. Property management fees is something else to account for. So definitely make sure you account for all the math at the end of the day of, okay, well, how much can I actually spend, and don't overspend essentially. Number 2 is definitely have reserves. A really great example is I actually just had like, I had like 4 days ago, one of my mortgage company or one of my insurance companies called me and was like, hey, we're canceling your insurance on this property. Like you have 4 days. And I was like, 4 days to what? Like, what do you mean I have no insurance? And they're like, and the bad part is the mortgage company can call my loan. So if I don't have insurance, they can be like, well, now you owe us all the mortgage, like have fun. So kind of stressful. And so I called my contractor and I was like, hey, I need you to like do all this stuff for me in 4 days. Like, thanks. And he did it, which was amazing. I ended up going with another insurance company, but definitely be prepared to like drop money on stuff that you did not see coming. So it's kind of based on the property, right? So like single family home that you're living in, you can probably have a little less. I know, Daniel, you were talking about an emergency fund, last week, and that's really important. Like I know Bobby has like this like audacious plan for an emergency fund. And I think it's amazing.
You got some secret bank accounts, baby.
Bro, I'm telling you, man, he's got like stacks on stacks. Like he's like, I have a tornado fund. I have an earthquake fund. Like I love it. It's amazing. But yeah, definitely have an emergency like real estate fund where you're like, oh, the pipe burst. I need a new sump pump, which you guys don't know what that is, but it's a thing on the East Coast. Like things that you don't foresee coming. So definitely make sure you have enough money for that in reserves. And then lastly, I would say definitely make sure that you have, especially for real estate investing, make sure you have an amazing team. That's the third mistake, is like going into it without an amazing team. You need a great realtor, you need a great property manager, and above all, you need an amazing contractor that's really not going to screw you over. Like I got an unbelievable contractor recently in my life. Like I'm sure my blood pressure's down. Like he's just taking care of everything. He's charging me great. He sees the vision for the future. And so he's kind of like on board with it. So definitely make sure you have your team. That's the third biggest mistake.
So what about amateurs? I know I've heard in the finance world, if you're trying to compete against Wall Street, you're going to lose 99 times out of 100, right? Like the kind of the GameStop, whatever stocks, that's a fluke.
Crypto, Dogecoin.
Some of us profited. Okay?
I'm going to hate on it for our listeners, because people who think, oh, I just buy a stock and it just goes up 10 times. Like that's just not normal. How realistic is it for somebody who is an amateur to get into the real estate game?
Yeah, so it all depends on how flexible you want to be, right? Like if you are in San Diego and you are trying to like buy $600,000 houses and house hack, like multifamily, I know all over the country, but especially California, is so hard to find because that's what everyone is looking for. That's unbelievably hard. And so what I would say is definitely make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. But at the end of the day, it's based on relationships. I'm a salesperson. I'm in sales. I sell medical devices. So it's like at the end of the day, sales is all about relationships, and so is real estate. I know a lot of the most successful real estate agents and investors today started with like they met someone at church who happened to have a property and they built a relationship, and everyone knew they wanted to go into real estate. And so they were like, oh, we have this property with multiple people that we just are kind of trying to retire. We're trying to, just lay back. And that's how they got their first property. So you can drive for dollars, right? You can knock on people's doors and be like, hey, your lawn is a mess, like, it looks like you're a tenant. It looks like you're someone who might want to go cash and sell your property. There's a lot of lists online where you can call what's called like vacant owners. So owners that don't live at the property, that's usually a rental property. A lot of the landlords don't want to be landlords anymore. And so if you call those people, you can find it, but it's at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And so you can get better deals than the big finance people because you have friends and family and neighbors, and the more you talk about it and the more you learn, the more you become competent, the more you're able to actually leverage yourself and have people trust you. And then you have the advantage over the big people.
All right. You got any more questions?
No, I don't have any more questions. We are so thankful for your time today, Austin. This was great. Yeah.
Super.
Let me know. Yeah, it was super fun. Love the podcast and super stoked to help out.
Yeah, like it's very informative. I will say, like, a lot of, like, my mom's a real estate agent, and my dad and my family have, like, dealt with kind of buying houses and stuff like that in the past. And so, and you would think I would know a good amount about that stuff, but a lot of times it's just like, swoop. And so thank you for, like, clearing that up and just, like, educating us.
Yeah, a lot of it, at the end of the day, I don't know what I'm talking. Like, I really don't think I know what I'm talking about. So, like, at the end of the day, you got to research, you got to learn. It's a constant learning thing, and really everyone can do it. And, I'm excited for everyone to get into it. So
I do have a dad joke of the day, actually.
Give it to me.
So,
I'm about to be a dad. I have a son on the way. So give me the dad joke.
Okay. So what is the best drink for property investors?
It's going to kill me. I'm going to sit here and think about it all day. So you better just tell me, because I'm going to what is it?
Realty.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I love it.
We're gonna end on like such a high note. And
then, no, that's the high note right there. That's the high note. It's amazing. Did you come up with that on the spot? Did you know that off the top of your head?
And it had a similar vibe, so it was kind of a mixture of research and making it up.
You don't understand. Bobby was probably awake last night, just like, oh, I can't wait to just send this joke. Just like geeking out, and then he's.
That's amazing. No, do you have any more?
No, no, we don't.
Next episode.
All right, that sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Austin.
Cool, yo. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya.